Most of us have heard of the Dewey Decimal System, and some of us have probably heard of Library of Congress classification, but what exactly are they? Both the Dewey Decimal System and Library of Congress classification are examples of what librarians call library classification systems. So, in short, they're ways of organizing books and other stuff on shelves, whether they're real shelves or even virtual shelves, and they're organized in a way that makes some sort of sense. But what does this mean and how does this work? If you've got a bookshelf, you probably have some sort of system that you use to organize your books. Maybe you try to keep everything by the same author together. Or maybe all of your cookbooks are at eye level because that's what you use the most. Maybe you've arranged your books by color to create a cool backdrop for your TikTok reels. In a way, these are all forms of library classification, just at a very small scale. Even if you have a large personal library, say 2 to 300 books, there's a good chance that you have a pretty good idea of where everything is. You've got some sort of system in your head that allows you to easily locate what you need. Now imagine you're a public library and you've got tens of thousands of books. Or maybe you're a library at a major university with millions of books. Once you get to that point, you need a really good system to organize everything. Libraries have tried out a few different ways to organize things, but most of them have ultimately settled on organizing by subject. Organizing by subject means that anyone browsing the shelves can serendipitously find books on similar topics, and that's useful. This was especially useful before the advent of the computerized catalog, which made it possible to easily find everything in a library on a single topic. Historically, most libraries were pretty small. They were private collections of individuals or families. Some of the bigger libraries were for the use of scholars at universities. It became possible to build really large libraries once Johannes Gutenberg developed the printing press in the 15th century. This made books much more accessible. Around the same time, philosophers became interested in how to categorize the world. They often built on the ideas of Plato and Aristotle to come up with grand unifying categorizations of everything. And these systems of categorizing the world were then used to organize libraries. Francis Bacon, the guy who said knowledge is power, categorized the sum of human knowledge as consisting of history, poesy, and philosophy. Each of these categories was divided into subcategories. So a library might borrow Bacon's system and have a section for philosophy, then a section for natural philosophy, then for physics, and then for math, and so on. And then within each section, the books might be further arranged by date or by author or by language. But what matters here is that the main principle of organization is the subject. Let's fast forward to 1876, where there's a lot going on in the world of libraries, especially in America. I call this year the birth of American library science because this is the year that the American Library Association is founded, Library Journal is first published, and notorious sex pest Melville Dewey publishes his first iteration of the Dewey Decimal System. There's a lot to say about Melville Dewey, and I might make a video about him in the future. At any rate, Dewey Decimal became the first classification system to be widely adopted not only in the United States, but around the world. What makes this system special is that it was designed to be very specific. Instead of just going, here's the section of all the library books on math, the Dewey Decimal System says, let's start basic. Let's say, here's all of the books that are on science, and all of these are in 500. If you want math specifically, you go to 510. And then for geometry, that's 516. If you want to get really specific, after this whole number, 516, you can stick more and more numbers after a decimal point until you get to the point where every single book has a unique, specific call number of its own. Another thing that makes the Dewey Decimal System special is that it was specifically designed for libraries, as opposed to these big philosophical systems of organization which don't necessarily correspond to the kind of books that libraries actually own. Dewey Decimal has 10 top-level categories that are actually pretty realistic. And the third thing that makes the Dewey Decimal System special is that it's abstract. Instead of having to write out words like fiction or geometry on a tiny label, the abstract codes of Dewey Decimal are short enough to fit comfortably on a sticker that you can place on the spine of a book. But they also tell you enough information that anyone who understands the system can tell you what a book is about just by seeing the call number. A lot of other library classifications were created after the introduction of the Dewey Decimal System. They all followed Dewey's lead by being specific, abstract, and designed for libraries. I found at least 80 other library classifications, but there are probably many more. These new systems were created because Dewey wasn't sufficient for a given library's collections. All of the numbers in Dewey can be really hard on the eyes, so a lot of systems, including the Library of Congress classification, introduced letters to break up the call numbers and make them easier to read. In other cases, Dewey's top-level classes were too broad to meet the needs of a specialized library, like libraries for music or law or medicine or religion. Nearly all library classifications used in the United States are deficient when it comes to adequately classifying books about Africa and Asia and classifying books about racial, ethnic, religious, and other minorities. They're also not great with modern topics like computer science or space exploration. We've talked a lot about the Dewey Decimal System, but there's one other system that's widely used in the United States, and that's Library of Congress classification. So the Dewey Decimal System is still widely used across the country. It's used mostly in public libraries. There are a lot of exceptions to this, so some public libraries are moving towards a model where things are shelved more like they would be in a bookstore. And there are some big systems like Chicago Public Libraries that use Library of Congress classification. Library of Congress classification was created in 1897, and this was in response to Melville Dewey not allowing the Library of Congress to make changes to his system to accommodate their very, very large collection. It took them over 70 years to finally finish the classification, which caused a lot of problems down the line. 81% of academic libraries in the United States use Library of Congress classification. Next time you're in a library, check out the shelves to see which system is used. If it's all numbers, there's a good chance you're looking at Dewey Decimal. If the call numbers begin with letters, then followed by numbers, then some more letters and numbers, you're probably looking at the Library of Congress classification. I recommend checking with the librarian if you're unsure. In short, library classification systems are just abstract ways of representing what books and other library materials are about. They give every single book a home on the shelf and make sure that books are shelved with other books on similar topics. Do you have a favorite library classification system? Have you used a library that uses something besides Dewey Decimal or Library of Congress classification? Let me know in the comments.